Thanksgiving dinner with the Bennett family had always been a little off. Not in a catastrophic, dishes flying across the room kind of way. More like a slow simmer of tension beneath polite smiles and overcooked turkey. There was always that one conversation, the one you could feel creeping up like a thundercloud. Everyone sensed it. No one stopped it. This time, the storm was named Derek, my older brother. He had a talent for turning small talk into subtle jabs. Married young, 3 kids by 30, a mortgage, and a golden retriever named Buckley. Derek liked to think he'd cracked the code to life. I, on the other hand, was 34, single, child-free, and living in a downtown loft with a cat and a career I loved. And every holiday, Derek made sure I remembered just how off-script I was. "So, Alex," he said, cutting into his mashed potatoes, "still no +1 at the table, huh?" I smiled tight-lipped. "Nope, just me this year." "You ever think about settling down?" he asked, tone light, but loaded. "You know, before it's too late?" There it was. The opening jab. "I'm good," I replied, sipping my wine. "Thanks for the concern, though." Derek chuckled, exchanging a knowing glance with his wife, Marissa. "I'm just saying, man. It gets lonely, you know? You don't want to be that guy who wakes up at 50 and realizes all his friends have families, and you've just got your cat." The table went silent. My mother cleared her throat and tried to redirect the conversation toward the sweet potatoes. Too late. Derek had already done it, pulled the pin and tossed the grenade. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I'd let it go so many times before. The digs, the smirks, the little backhanded lectures about the right path. But this time hit different. Maybe it was the way he said "that guy," like I was some pathetic footnote in his success story. "I'm not lonely," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm happy. And just because my life doesn't mirror yours doesn't mean it's broken." Derek blinked. A smug smile tugged at his lips. "Hey, I'm just trying to help. You'll regret it one day. That's all I'm saying." Maybe he meant it as advice. Maybe not. Either way, something shifted in me that night. I'd spent years being the polite brother, the quiet one, the accommodating one. But sitting at that table, listening to Derek casually declare that my life was less than because I hadn't duplicated his, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about kids. This was about respect. And I was done letting it slide. It wasn't just Thanksgiving. That night was only the latest episode in a very long-running series. Derek, the gold standard sibling. A series filled with smug grins, passive-aggressive questions, and a rotating cast of family members who always seemed to nod along, as if he were some prophet handing down wisdom from a suburban mountaintop. Growing up, Derek was the golden boy. Star athlete, high school valedictorian, early college acceptance. He was the blueprint our parents never stopped measuring me against. When he proposed to Marissa at 23 in front of a lake during sunset, because of course he did, the bar was set so high, it left the stratosphere. Meanwhile, I was still figuring out how to parallel park and wondering if journalism was a viable career path. I didn't resent him. Not really. At least, not at first. I just got used to being the alternative child, the one who didn't do things the normal way. I moved to the city, dated when I wanted, focused on work, and carved out a life that fit me. And I was proud of it, quietly proud. I didn't need parades or group chats filled with baby photos to feel validated. But Derek always had a way of reminding me that he thought I should. I remember last Christmas. The whole family gathered around the fire, sipping hot cocoa like a scene from a Hallmark movie. Derek was showing off photos of his kids building snowmen in the backyard. "They're growing up so fast," he said, beaming. Then, looking at me, "You wouldn't believe how much you can miss when you're chasing careers instead of real life." It was always like that, disguised as wisdom, delivered with a smile. Just enough poison in the sugar to sting. The worst part? No one ever said anything. Not Dad, not Mom, not even my younger sister Emily, who usually had no filter. They just sat there, letting it happen. Because Derek's way was the right way. And well, I was still figuring things out. So clearly I didn't have a say. But here's the thing. I had figured things out. My job wasn't just fulfilling, it paid well. I had a community, friends who felt more like family and freedom. I had weekends that didn't revolve around soccer practices and sleepless nights. My home was quiet, full of books, music, and yes, my cat, Theo, who loved me without judgment. And yet, none of that ever seemed enough around Derek. But it would be, because after that Thanksgiving dinner, I made a decision. I wasn't going to just sit back and let him define my worth anymore. He wanted to talk about what I was missing? Fine. Soon, I'd give him something to talk about. I wasn't planning to see Derek again so soon, but fate, or rather, our mother, had other ideas. She was turning 60, and naturally, Derek offered to host the birthday dinner at his newly renovated house. Another opportunity for a humble brag showcase, complete with Pinterest-perfect decor and artisanal cocktails he suddenly knew how to make. I came late on purpose, not to be rude, just to minimize the window of exposure. I brought Mom a rare edition of her favorite novel, wrapped in deep blue tissue paper and tied with a silk ribbon. She cried when she opened it, and for a moment, I felt like I had finally done something right. Then Derek walked in from the kitchen, drying his hands on a linen towel, and dropped his latest gem. Wow, no flowers? No cake? Just a book. The room chuckled. Even Mom smiled politely, tucking the book to the side like it was an old birthday card instead of the carefully sourced treasure it was. I didn't respond. I just inhaled, deep and slow, and smiled like I didn't care. But I did, because it wasn't just about the book. It was about all the ways Derek minimized the things that mattered to me. Later that evening, we sat at the dining table while Marissa passed around tiny plates of flourless chocolate torte. I wasn't even hungry, but I took a slice out of obligation. That's when the conversation took its usual turn: marriage, kids, real priorities. Derek leaned back in his chair, sipping whiskey like he was in a goddamn movie, and casually said, "You know, Ben, the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Biologically speaking, I mean. At a certain point, you'll just miss the window." There it was. The clock comment. The ticking time bomb that society loved to toss at anyone who dared to exist outside the nuclear family blueprint. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I'd heard it so many times I could practically recite it. "You mean like you and Marissa? Married young, 2 kids, white fence, marital counseling before 35. His face twitched for a second. Just a second. But it was enough. "You're one to talk," he said, the edge finally showing. "Still playing house with your cat and overpriced throw pillows?" I looked at him, really looked at him. His shoulders were a little stiffer. The smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. Marissa had gone quiet, her gaze stuck on her dessert like it held the answers to a happier life. And that's when I realized something was off. Derek's perfect life? It was cracking. And maybe, just maybe, that ticking clock wasn't aimed at me after all. 2 weeks after the birthday dinner, I got a text from Marissa. "Hey Ben, do you have time for coffee sometime this week?" Short, polite, strange. I stared at the message for a while, unsure if I was hallucinating. Marissa and I had always been fine. Cordial, distant in the way that people are when one of them is married to your nemesis. But a coffee invitation? That was new. Curiosity got the better of me. We met at a little place near her office, neutral territory. She looked tired. Not in the glamorous, working mom juggling it all way she usually presented, but bone-deep, smudged mascara, soul-worn tired. She smiled as I walked in, but it faltered quickly. "Thanks for coming," she said, wrapping her fingers around the mug like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I didn't know who else to talk to. That line alone should have floored me. But what came next shattered everything I thought I knew. "It's Derek," she said quietly. "He's been different. For a while now. Snapping at the kids. Cold with me. Distant. But not in the I'm tired way. It's like he's angry all the time, and I don't know why." I blinked. Derek? Mr. Smug Stability? Angry? He barely looks at me, she continued. And last week, I found this hidden bank account, transferring money into it. Thousands. When I asked, he said it was for emergencies. But Ben, we already have savings. We don't need a secret fund. She was unraveling right in front of me, and for once, I wasn't the one on the defensive. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't gloat. Because honestly, I didn't feel like celebrating. I just felt stunned. He used to be so kind, she whispered. I don't even know who he is anymore. And maybe that was the most haunting part. Because I had always known who Derek was. Or at least, I thought I did. But now, sitting across from his wife as she quietly broke apart, I started to wonder if Derek had simply perfected the art of performing. Smiling on cue, delivering lines like a man who'd memorized the script of a perfect life. And now, the mask was slipping. Have you thought about leaving? I asked. She looked up, eyes glassy. I think about it every day. And just like that, my brother's kingdom of curated perfection didn't look so indestructible anymore. It looked fragile, and maybe, just maybe, ready to fall. It was a Tuesday evening when the explosion finally came. I was home alone, curled up with a book and a glass of wine, when the knock rattled my front door like a warning. Not a polite tap. A bang. Repeated. Urgent. I opened it to find Derek standing there, red-faced, soaked from the rain, and radiating fury. You talked to Marissa, he growled before I could even say hello. I didn't flinch. She asked me to meet her. He stepped forward like he owned the threshold, as if our shared blood still granted him access to every corner of my life. You had no right to get involved in my marriage. You mean the one where you lie, cheat, and emotionally manipulate your wife? That one, I asked, arms crossed. That set him off. You think you're so righteous, don't you? Just because your sad little life fell apart doesn't give you the moral high ground to judge mine. My life didn't fall apart, I said coldly. I built something real after you spent years tearing me down. He scoffed. Please. You were always the loser. The disappointment. Our parents pitted you. And you loved that, didn't you? I shot back. Loved playing the perfect son while trashing me behind my back. But now that the cracks are showing, you're scared. His jaw clenched. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead, but he didn't seem to notice. Or care. He was unraveling. You have no idea what I've been through, he snapped. What I've carried for this family. For everyone. No, Derek, I said, voice low. You carried a lie. And you made sure everyone else felt small so you could feel important. He didn't answer. Just stood there, chest heaving, eyes wild. For a second, I thought he might hit me. But instead, he just laughed. A bitter, broken sound. She's leaving, he said, almost to himself. After everything I gave her. Maybe she's tired of living in a house built on fear, I said softly. He shook his head, stepped back into the rain, and without another word, walked off into the night like a man who realized the storm wasn't just outside. It was inside him, and it was only just beginning. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small in his presence. I felt free. The days after Derek's visit passed in a strange, still calm, like the eye of a hurricane. But I knew better than to mistake it for peace. It was only a matter of time before the damage caught up with him. And then it started. Marissa filed for divorce. It was official. No more threats. No more second chances. She'd had enough, and this time, she meant it. Word spread fast through the family, as it always did. My phone lit up with messages from cousins I hadn't heard from in years, all whispering the same thing. What happened to Derek? The golden child had fallen. Of course, no one said that out loud. They tiptoed around it. Still tried to paint him as the victim. He's under a lot of stress. Marissa always seemed a bit intense. Maybe it's just a rough patch. But I didn't let them rewrite the story this time. No, I told them plainly. He cheated. He manipulated her. He pushed her until she broke. She didn't leave on a whim. She escaped. The silence that followed those words was deafening, but necessary. I visited Marissa a week later. She looked lighter somehow. Not happy. Divorce never feels like victory, but unburdened. Like someone who had been holding her breath for too long and had finally let go. I thought I was going crazy, she said, stirring her tea slowly. He made me believe everything was my fault. I nodded. That's what he does. He breaks you from the inside out and then calls it love. She looked at me, her eyes glassy. Thank you for not letting me stay blind. I swallowed hard. I know what it's like to wake up too late and wonder who you became just to survive. We sat in silence after that, the kind that doesn't need filling. Meanwhile, Derek was unraveling. He'd moved in with a friend temporarily, then tried begging Marissa to take him back. When that failed, he turned on our parents, blaming them for siding against him, though they hadn't said a word. His perfect image, so carefully polished for years, was cracking like glass. And the irony? He had once said I was the failure. Now he was the one losing everything. And I hadn't lifted a single finger. Some storms come without warning. But others, like this one, you can see them building from miles away. A month passed, and the weight of the past few weeks was finally starting to sink in. Derek's fall from grace was complete. He was no longer the man he had been, the man the family had revered. Now, he was the man everyone whispered about in quiet corners, their voices laced with pity, if not contempt. But while everyone focused on Derek, I turned inward. I realized that it wasn't just about him anymore. I had to think about me. For too long, I had lived in the shadow of my older brother. When people thought of the O'Neill family, they thought of Derek's success, his charm, his ambition. I had been the quiet one, the one who never quite fit into the mold. But I wasn't that person anymore, not the boy who let Derek dictate the terms of his life. I had something he would never have, the power to choose. And so I did. I didn't need to wait for someone else to validate my worth. I didn't need approval from a man who had always measured me against impossible standards. I could create my own future. The first thing I did was finally leave my job at the firm. I had always felt like an outsider there, trying to live up to an image that wasn't mine. It was time to build something that had meaning, something for myself. I started my own company, something small at first, but it was mine. My vision, my rules. And I couldn't have done it without the lessons I learned from Marissa. Her strength in walking away, her courage to stop playing the game, had lit a fire inside me. She had faced her own storm and come out on the other side. If she could do it, so could I. The hardest part wasn't just starting over. It was the guilt, the nagging feeling that somehow I had failed to warn Derek sooner, that I hadn't done enough to stop the avalanche that was now swallowing him whole. But then I remembered something. The only person responsible for his choices was Derek. I couldn't carry the weight of his failures any longer. As I stood in front of the mirror one morning, ready to face the world as someone new, I saw a reflection I hadn't recognized before. Confident, unburdened, and free. And for the first time in years, I felt a strange, quiet peace. Derek might have lost everything, but I had gained something far more valuable, the freedom to be me, to finally be enough, without anyone else's permission. Maybe it wasn't a victory I'd ever be able to explain to anyone, but in my heart, I knew it was my win.